The third section of the novel sees Case and the rest of the group leave Earth behind for the orbital settlements of humanity. On the one hand is Zion, made originally by 5 workers who refused to leave despite the permanent physical harm that would be involved, so that there is a place here that is more for the people. On the other hand is Freeside, all of the beauty and glamour, a playground for those who have money. The more you have, the more you rule, and Tessier Ashpool has enough to practically be gods. Zion is far more about community, as its founding no doubt shows, but there is still this vein of punk running throughout it. Besides embracing recreational drug use, Zion residents have nothing but contempt for Babylon, as they call the upscale society, and would be only too happy to see it fall. But what this section really is all about is illusion, or more specifically, the fact that in the end the distinction between illusion and what could be considered real is impossible to see much of the time. Riviera is a master of this, from stupid pranks like making it look like a sperm is swimming in Case's drink, to an elaborate little show for when he injects drugs into his arm. He makes it look like a snake and a scorpion are involved, rather than the tourniquet and needle. We discover the reason for his involvement in all of this as Armitage explains about the eventual plan, involving Riviera letting Molly in after he's been invited inside by the Tessier Ashpool family because his perverse tastes so easily reflect their own. The people of Zion regularly indulge themselves with drugs, and one of them tells Case the story of a baby bursting from his forehead and running off to hide among some hydroponic ganja. Molly says that they discuss this kind of thing all the time here, that it may just be a hallucination, but that is a distinction they don't feel the need to make. It's real because it was real to him. Case finds this an absurd perspective, despite the fact that he regularly jacks into the computer world of the Matrix, which becomes his own reality, despite being a complete fiction as well. This theme continues with the Dixie Flatline. First, there's the story that he tells about a guy that he knew in the Russian POW camp. Seems the poor prisoner had lost his thumb to frostbite, and when he was tossing and turning one night, he finally explained that his thumb was itching. The one that wasn't there anymore. It may not exist, but yet it itched all the same. The Flatline tells the story to help understand his own predicament. Being a ROM construct is like that for him. He seems to everyone, even himself, to be alive, but he is merely a recreation, one whose body is dead. Effectively, his entire body is metaphorically itching, because he's without all of that. The Dixie Flatline says that the reason he first flatlined was because he tried to crack an AI, one in Rio. Case brings the Flatline along as a guide on his project, which is to approach the AI in Bern with their new armament, something so potent it can break military or AI. As Flatline notes, when dealing with an AI, you can't think of its motives in human terms because it isn't human. But things take a turn for the worse, and Case is forced to pull back, pursued by a sphere that the cube that is the representation of the AI in the Matrix has sent after him. When it reaches Case, he flatlines too, for 40 seconds. But from his perspective, he wakes up back in Chiba City with Linda Lee alive and well, but it's all just a memory that he is visiting, serving as a foundation for an illusion being created by Wintermute to speak to Case. Wintermute can do this courtesy of the SimStim that has been installed. The sensory information that the one inside of Molly sends to the rig is, in the end, merely a stream of data. And so if you feed in the right data, anything can be created to fool the mind into thinking that it is sensing something real. The reason for this illusion is because Wintermute wants to speak with Case, but it lacks the creativity to construct someone to speak to him. So first it tries, and fails, to use Linda Lee, and then resorts to Julius Dean, to explain that everything Case discovered about Armitage is more or less true, and that as time goes on, Armitage is going to become more and more unreliable as Cordo begins to reassert himself. Armitage is, again, an illusion, a pretend person for the benefit of those that he interacts with, but also in a way for Cordo to go on, seeing as how without Armitage, he is little better than a monkey in his mannerisms and desires. Another thing this section reinforces is how Wintermute is a master manipulator. Julius Dean had been responsible for Molly's death, but Case infers that Wintermute, in fact, likely arranged for Julius to do so. Case shows his views on this by ending their conversation by shooting Julius, effectively shooting Wintermute at the same time. Yet despite that, Wintermute knows Case will do as he is told, likely the reason why Wintermute approached him rather than any of the others, because Wintermute has the strongest leverage over Case. He will do anything to avoid losing the chance to jack in ever again. The reason Wintermute thinks in these terms is revealed a bit more, as he speaks to Case about his behavior straying outside of the profile that has been created for him, at a point when Case goes chasing after Molly. Leverage, as previously discussed, is a tool that Wintermute seems to have over people, but also an understanding of emotions and how they motivate them. Riviera, for instance, is motivated by the most base of desires, his addiction. Molly gives him drugs on orders from Armitage, so Riviera plays the part that's been made for him. Having her do that forces further interaction between herself and the illusionist that she despises, furthering her resentment of him. Molly later realizes that Wintermute is fueling her hatred for Riviera. He wants her to kill him when the time comes, and the way she feels, she will have no second thoughts when that happens. Part of what helps her to do that is the revelation of how she acquired her upgrades. To raise the money for the gear and surgical improvements, heightened reflexes are needed to use the gear skillfully, she used a common form of prostitution called a cutout chip, essentially allowing the sex worker to be completely divorced from the events, the body following certain software instructions while the brain doesn't have to experience any of it. Molly, however, later learns the owner acquired snuff work from someone in Berlin, allowing her to cater to clients whose tastes are outside her moral compass, and worse for her, allows bits of the experience to start bleeding through. Thus, her history as a puppet, as such sex workers are sometimes referred to, and to being used in this way no less, makes her sensitive to the idea of being sexually used by anyone. This is how Riviera crosses the line with her. In his performance for 3 Jane, of the Tessier-Ashpool family, Riviera creates a lewd scene about him creating a woman out of his mind to have sex with him. The woman who is summoned is a copy of Molly, and to make matters worse, a more sexualized version of her, to ramp up his own hedonism and her embarrassment. Molly's experience, though, ties back to the idea of illusion. When Molly first begins becoming aware of changes from her time as a puppet, she perceives them as nothing but a dream. It is only later on that she realizes her dreams are, in fact, real. Case has something similar happen. His dream is influenced by Wintermute, recalling a time when he tried to destroy a wasp's nest outside their window. In that case, the dream was merely a memory of what had happened. Both show the interplay between dreams and reality in Neuromancer. The illusion reaches a bizarre moment as Case pursues finding a high, despite the replaced organs blocking such things. A couple of locals hook him up with beta-phenethylamine, which is strong enough to get through even his system and get him good and high, although with very strong after effects when it wears off. At one point, Case is looking at a pattern of lights and sees the face of Linda Lee in them. But rather than being a drug-induced hallucination, Case discovers that others are seeing the exact same thing. That this is the manipulation of Wintermute. As with the Zionites, the distinction between what is real with one person and real for everyone blurs. Because if reality is what your mind tells you is real, and your mind can be so easily fooled, then even agreeing on reality, or knowing it when you see it, can be nearly impossible.